Welcome back, welcome back. On Thursday morning, the price of oil reached a new record high, $135 a barrel. 3 years ago, the investment bank Goldman Sachs suggested, to much ridicule at the time, much ridicule, that oil could, at some stage, pass $100. Not only were they right, but it kept going up. And now Goldman Sachs, here they are again, predicting a super spike that will drive crude oil to $200 a barrel. So what are the real causes for this relentless rise of oil prices? High demand, weak dollar, speculation, or a combination of all these reasons? Well, joining me now to explain everything is the economist Liam Halligan. Welcome, Liam.
Sir David.
Why is it so high? Why does it keep going on?
A huge number of reasons. On the demand side, of course, you've got almost unrelenting demand coming in from China, India and the other emerging giants. It's not just that these are hugely populous countries, it's also that their people are getting richer per head, and people, when they get richer, consume a lot more fuel, not just for cars and heating, but in all the consumer goods that they buy. And then on the supply side, there is now a realisation that what a lot of us have been saying for years is coming true. The world can't produce oil quickly enough. You've got now leading commentators in the oil markets, not just Goldman Sachs, but other legends like T. Boone Pickens, Matthew Simmons and other real oil insiders saying that some of the really big fields in the world, not least Guar in Saudi Arabia, Cantarell in Mexico, they're losing pressure. We can't pump oil quickly enough, not just now, but in the years to come.
But Brazil have just said that they've discovered something that could be the third largest oil field in the world. That would help, wouldn't it?
They have indeed, but that will take many years to come on stream. The technology to access that deep water oil hasn't yet been invented. And the crucial thing is how quickly can the big oil exporting countries, not just in OPEC and elsewhere, turn the spigot, as it were, and increase demand at the margin. And it's not just a question of difficulties increasing oil production, it's also a dearth of refining capacity around the world. Just think how far we've come. 5 or 6 years ago, OPEC was officially still defending $25 a barrel. Just a year ago, we were at $55 a barrel. We're now, as you say, at 135, pushing relentlessly upwards. And the futures markets, where the smart money is for oil prices in 2009, 10, 11 and 12, that's at $135, $140 a barrel as well. The market's in now what's called contango, where the futures price is above the current spot price. And that's the really scary thing.
But doesn't the situation happen at some stage where people, because of the problems with food and other things, they have to cut down somehow on their use of oil, and that would in turn lower the price, perhaps?
You know, for the last 2 or 3 years, Sir David, as there have been upward pressures on the oil price, most of the Western world, not really wishing to face up to the resource issues that challenge us, have been assuming that when the US slowed down, when the US went into recession, the world's biggest oil importer, that would mean that the demand for oil curtailed and the price would come down. But hey, guess what? We know from the 2001 US recession that when the US slows down, oil demand doesn't really change all that much, because oil is what economists call a very inelastic good. The demand stays pretty constant, whatever happens to the price. Now, at the margin, we will start using gradually, there are big cultural issues here, cars that use less fuel. We will start finding oil alternatives.
Biofuels?
But these relatively small changes in our overall demand for oil will be completely dwarfed by the massive increases in demand from the developing world, not only as these countries become more populous, but as each individual person gets richer and uses a lot more oil.
And what about this figure of, this scary figure of $200 a barrel, 200? I mean, is that possible?
I think it's completely plausible. If you think that now there are 625 million cars in the world, even on conservative estimates, that's set to double in the next 20 years. And when you then consider that 70% of global oil use is for cars, then it's a complete no-brainer that there's going to be massive upward pressure on demand, and there's absolutely no sign that the global oil industry can find enough oil quickly enough to meet that kind of demand. You know, we haven't found a major oil field in the world for about 20 or 30 years. And now, despite this huge price incentive that the oil majors have got to find lots more oil, and the fact that oil is more economic to drill in difficult places, they still haven't found big fields that can really increase the amount of oil that's pumped every day. We need about 84, 85 million barrels a day, and the world is just about able to produce that much. Any higher, and it's just fair.
So, would it help if on Monday all of our viewers around the world ran to work?
It would help, but that's not going to happen on any kind of mass scale big enough to really change global oil demand. A lot of oil demand, of course, isn't just from consumers, it's from industry as well. Our whole way of life, our transport system is built around oil. And of course, oil isn't just for fuel and heat, it's for all kinds of chemicals, pharmaceuticals, all kinds of other building blocks of industry. Oil's everywhere, and the West is still addicted to oil.
Thank you very much indeed, Liam. Well, now, the story so far. Since the Chinese government opened its doors to the international media, strong comparisons have been made, which I'm sure you've read, between the Chinese rescue efforts and those of Myanmar, the country formerly known as Burma. The bottom line remains that both countries have suffered large-scale disasters, and those who survived the calamity in both countries are now at a risk of contracting diseases. But now we come from the story so far to the story overnight, really, that the latest news, which we want to explore in a second. After much criticism, the Burmese junta leader has now agreed to allow access to all, we understand, all foreign aid workers after a meeting with the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. So if this is true, that's a real triumph for him. And we're joined now by Matthias Schmale, the International Director from the Red Cross, from the British Red Cross, who'll tell us more about the ongoing efforts. But first of all, the key thing, overnight, what does this mean in practice? Do you understand it's all foreign aid workers?
We have heard the news like you. We've got Red Cross workers on the ground in Myanmar, Burma, and in the region, and we're checking out now whether action will follow words, because obviously from our understanding the procedures of needing to obtain visas is still in place, and we will now have to see whether indeed visas will be sped up, the granting of visas, and people allowed in. But it's definitely great news if now action follows it.
And if in fact they don't change and exclude some countries or whatever. And,
yes.
Although in this case, I mean, I suppose you could funnel aid through an acceptable country in any case, perhaps.
Most definitely. We have said from the beginning that in rather complex situations like this, we cannot expect this to be a Western-dominated aid effort. We must work very closely as an international community, and clearly surrounding countries like China and India that seem somewhat acceptable to the regime have a clear lead role to play in this effort.
But has the delay cost lives, or maybe in time, at least in terms of epidemics, might be in time to stop the loss, but
yes.
Has it lost lives?
It's hard to tell at this stage, to tell you the truth, and the reason for that is the access. We just have areas that have still not been reached and where there is no independent verification of what's going on. What we're reasonably sure of is that up to 2.5 million people are out there in need of aid. We think that so far there have not been massive numbers of people who've died since the cyclone struck. But clearly with every day that they do not get aid, the risk of that is increasingly big.
And bouquets, in fact, for the Chinese government, there have been all around the world for their instant response in their country as compared to what happened in Burma. Do you think they learned from what happened in Burma?
Maybe,
or Myanmar?
Yeah, that's difficult to tell. Whether they learned from there or not, I completely share the assessment that they have, by all accounts, done a good job. That's what our people on the ground say, the Chinese authorities, that is. And they've done what's needed. In a disaster of this scale, you need not only the government, you need military to mobilize, and you need significant civil society actors. So the Chinese Red Cross has obviously been part of this as well.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Matthias. We hope that you find that all of these agreements hold, do you know what I mean? Burma and some other countries,
yes.
Other countries like Myanmar, have on occasion withdrawn from agreements, but let's hope this one holds and that the progress that you're looking forward to having comes true.
Do.
Thank you very much indeed. And that's all we have for this week, with a upbeat note there, a hint of optimism in a terrible tragedy. Next week, a new James Bond novel comes out, and I'll be talking to the man who has taken up Ian Fleming's golden pen, no doubt with poison in the top or something like that, one of those devices. Join us, much more besides, next week, just 1 week from now. Bye-bye for now.